You might think Allegheny Lunatic Asylum is just an old abandoned building with a crazy history. But what most people don't know are the stories that never get told. Strange noises echo through the halls, shadows move just out of sight, and dark secrets linger in every corner. Tonight, I'm taking you inside a true tale that will send chills down your spine. This isn't your average ghost story. If you've ever heard about the Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, you probably know it as this massive, abandoned psychiatric hospital out in West Virginia, built way back in the mid-1800s. It was designed to house thousands of patients, but ended up holding way more than it was meant to. And the overcrowding was just the start of its dark history. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. It was a dare, really. A group of friends and I wanted to explore the asylum before it's officially closed to visitors after dark. We'd heard the usual stories, whispers of shadows lurking in empty hallways, doors that slammed shut by themselves, and strange figures glimpsed in the corners of your eyes. But we thought it was all just local legends, stuff to scare tourists. Turns out it was way more than that. Walking through those massive iron gates felt like stepping into another world. The air was thick, heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. The inside smelled of damp stone and rust, and every footstep echoed through the empty halls like a warning. We started in the east wing, which was rumoured to be the most active part of the asylum. The walls were lined with peeling paint and old rusty beds. Patient rooms were cramped, barely bigger than a closet, with heavy metal doors that had barred windows, like cages. It was easy to imagine the suffering that must have happened here. The asylum wasn't just a hospital, it was a place where people were locked away, forgotten, experimented on. Some stories say the staff used harsh methods to treat patients, from isolation chambers to shock therapy. The screams from those days, some say they never really stopped. As we moved deeper inside, the temperature dropped suddenly. I could see my breath puff in the cold air. One of my friends swore he heard soft footsteps behind us, but when we turned, no one was there, just empty halls. Then came the whispers, faint at first like the wind slipping through broken windows, but they grew louder, almost like voices. But we couldn't make out any words. The air got heavier, like something unseen was watching us. Every shadow seemed to twitch and stretch just beyond the edges of the flashlight beams. We reached the old therapy room, a small space with metal chains hanging from the walls, remnants from a time no one wanted to talk about. Suddenly the lights on our flashlights flickered, then went out. We were plunged into total darkness. I remember the silence, thick and suffocating. Then came a low guttural sound, like a growl but not quite human. I froze. The others whispered, trying to calm each other, but it felt like the building itself was alive, breathing around us. After what felt like forever, the lights flickered back on, but something was different. On the wall, scratched deep into the paint, was a message. "Leave now." No one said a word. We didn't need to. That message was a warning, maybe the only one we needed. We turned back, trying to retrace our steps, but the asylum seemed to shift around us. Hallways that were there moments ago disappeared, replaced by new corridors we hadn't seen. It was like the building didn't want us to leave. Then, from down a long hallway, a sudden bang echoed, like a heavy door slamming shut. My heart jumped. We ran. Outside, the night air hit us like a wave. The gates that had been wide open before were now closed, locked tight. No matter how hard we pushed and pulled, they wouldn't budge. We were trapped. For hours we tried everything, banging on the gates, shouting for help, even calling 911. But no one came. The asylum stood silent, watching us, daring us to stay. Finally, just as dawn started to creep over the horizon, the gates swung open on their own. We didn't hesitate. We bolted out and never looked back. To this day, I don't know what held us there. Some say it was just the old gate stuck in the cold. But others, those who've spent time inside the asylum, say the building itself traps those who don't belong. And honestly, after that night, I'm not so sure the asylum is completely abandoned. After that terrifying night trapped outside those iron gates, I thought I'd never set foot near Allegheny again. But curiosity has a way of pulling you back, especially when you're left with questions that don't have answers. So, a few weeks later, with some serious nerves and a lot less bravado, I went back, this time during the day, but the asylum didn't feel any less heavy. The sun was shining, but inside, the shadows were deeper than before. Even with daylight pouring through the broken windows, something about those walls absorbed the light. The asylum felt like a giant beast, hollow but full of secrets. I started by exploring the basement, a place none of us had dared to go on the first trip. Down the crumbling stairs, the air got colder and damper, the smell sharper. This was where they used to keep the isolation cells, tiny rooms barely big enough to sit in, with nothing but a small barred window at the top. I shined my flashlight into one cell. The walls were scratched with what looked like desperate messages, names, dates, cryptic symbols. One scratched phrase stood out: "Don't let them take you." My skin crawled. Who were they? Doctors? Spirits? Something else? I heard the faint sound of dripping water echoing through the tunnels, but there was no leak I could see. Then a whisper so soft I thought I imagined it. But it came again, a voice saying, "Help me." I froze, heart pounding. The voice was desperate, pleading. I called out, "Who's there?" No answer, just silence. I moved forward, deeper into the basement, following the whispers. The tunnel opened up into a large empty room, the old operating theatre. Rusted tools were scattered on a table, and broken glass lay everywhere. This was where the cruelest treatments happened: lobotomies, ice pick surgeries. The walls seemed to soak in the suffering, and I felt it like a weight pressing on my chest. Suddenly I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging, coming from the far corner. I turned but saw nothing. The temperature dropped again, and my breath came out in thick clouds. The shadows shifted, and for a second I saw a figure, pale, hunched, with hollow eyes staring right at me before it vanished. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a loose stone. I wanted to run, but something held me there. A morbid curiosity, maybe a need to understand. Then, a loud crash echoed through the tunnels. A door slammed somewhere above me. The whispers grew louder, voices overlapping. "Leave now, get out, they're coming." Panic hit like a wave. I scrambled up the stairs, barely noticing the chilling laughter that followed me. Outside, the sun was still shining, but I felt like I was running from something dark, something that didn't want to be disturbed. Back in my car, hands trembling, I swore I saw something move in the rearview mirror, a shadow standing just beyond the edge of the parking lot, watching. That night I couldn't sleep. The whispers followed me home, echoing in the back of my mind. I started having nightmares, flashes of the asylum, screams, cold hands grabbing at me in the dark. I wasn't sure if it was real or if my mind was breaking under the weight of what I'd seen. But one thing was clear: whatever haunts Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, it's not done with me yet. After my last visit to the asylum, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed even. But the stories, the pull of the unknown, it was too strong. So despite everything, I decided to get permission to spend a night inside the asylum during a supervised tour. The night shift, when the shadows grow longer and the silence gets heavier. The moment I stepped inside at night, the place felt alive in a way it never did during the day. The moonlight streamed through shattered windows, casting long, crooked shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl across the walls. The tour guide warned us to stay together, but as the group moved through the main hall, I slipped away, drawn toward the east wing, the heart of the asylum's darkest stories. Hallway after hallway, the silence was broken only by the echo of my footsteps and the distant dripping of water. The air was thick with a coldness that sank deep into my bones. I found myself outside the old patient common room, a place where patients were forced to gather, sometimes under strict and cruel supervision. The room was frozen in time, broken chairs, shattered windows, and walls scrawled with faint messages, half erased but still readable. They watch. No escape. Forever trapped. As I shone my flashlight over the walls, the beam caught something. A figure sitting motionless in the corner. For a split second, I thought I saw eyes glinting back at me. I called out softly, "Hello?" No response. The figure vanished. My heart thumped hard and I debated running back to the group. But curiosity pushed me forward, deeper into the shadows. I reached the old administration offices, rooms where the staff once planned treatments and kept patient records. The door was cracked open, and inside papers were scattered across the floor as if dropped in a hurry. On the desk lay a worn leather-bound journal. I picked it up and opened to a page dated 1947. The entry read, "The experiments are escalating. Patients are screaming more each night. I fear this place is losing its grip on reality. The walls hold secrets too terrible to share. Suddenly a cold breeze blew through the room, despite no windows being open. The journal slammed shut and the lights flickered. Then came the sound, low moaning, distant but growing closer. It echoed through the hallways, bouncing off the stone walls like a chorus of lost souls. I felt a presence behind me and I spun around, but nothing was there. Panicking now, I tried to find my way back, but the corridors twisted unnaturally, like the asylum itself was rearranging. The moaning grew louder, more desperate, filling my ears until it drowned out everything else. Suddenly a hand grabbed my shoulder. I whipped around, but the space was empty. A whisper hissed in my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I bolted down the hall, the sounds chasing me, shadows clawing at my heels. When I finally burst into the main hall, the group was waiting, worried. I told them what happened, but they looked skeptical, until one of the others showed me a mark on their arm, a bruise in the shape of a handprint. We left the asylum that night, but the feeling of being watched followed, never left any of us. The asylum's grip doesn't end when you walk away. It clings like a shadow that won't let go. After the night shift tour, I couldn't stop thinking about that journal entry and the weird bruise my friend got. Something inside the asylum was still active, still dangerous, so I decided to go back, this time alone, to find out more. I'd heard whispers about a hidden ward, a place where the worst cases were sent, far from prying eyes. Officially, it was erased from the records, but locals swore it existed deep in the bowels of the asylum. I slipped in early one morning before any tours started. The main building was quiet, almost peaceful compared to the chaos inside my head. I found an old map of the asylum in a dusty archive room. The map showed a section labelled Ward 13. No official records, no guides, nothing but a blank space on most modern layouts. Using the map, I made my way through a maze of corridors and locked doors. Most of the doors were rusted shut, but one at the far end of a long hallway was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air hit me like a wall, thick, stale, with the faint smell of decay. The ward was a forgotten nightmare, peeling wallpaper, broken beds, and old patient belongings scattered everywhere. But what really sent a shiver down my spine were the scratched messages on the walls. Frantic warnings, names, dates, and the phrase, "They're watching." As I explored, I found a small room with a metal door and a tiny window. Inside were remnants of what looked like restraints, leather straps, chains, and rusted metal cuffs. I felt a cold presence behind me, and a whisper echoed, "You don't belong here." Suddenly the door slammed shut. I was trapped. Panic surged as I pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The room grew colder, the darkness thicker. Then I saw them, faint shadows moving just beyond the window, faces distorted and hollow pressed against the glass. A voice hissed, "Join us." I barely escaped when the door finally gave way. Running down the hall, I felt invisible hands grab at my clothes trying to pull me back. Outside the ward, the asylum felt even more alive, the walls pulsating with anger and sorrow. I knew I had to leave, but a part of me was still drawn to the darkness. After my narrow escape from the hidden ward, I thought I was done. But the asylum wasn't finished with me. The shadows followed me everywhere, in my dreams, in quiet moments, even when I was wide awake. One night, I got a call from one of the original tour guides. He sounded shaken, telling me about strange activity near the old asylum grounds, lights flickering, unexplained noises, and visitors going missing. Against my better judgment, I went back one last time, this time at midnight, alone. The gates creaked open like a breath, inviting me inside. The darkness was thick, almost solid. As I walked through the crumbling halls, the whispers started again, low, urgent, warning me to leave. I reached the main hall, and there, in the moonlight, I saw them, shadows moving just beyond the edges of my vision. Faces twisted in pain and anger, silent screams trapped behind invisible walls. The temperature plummeted. I felt hands grabbing at me from every direction, trying to pull me into the darkness. I ran, heart pounding, breath ragged. Every corner I turned, the asylum seemed to stretch and twist, trying to trap me. But then, through the chaos, I spotted a door. The exit. I sprinted toward it, bursting through just as the sun began to rise. Outside, the world felt unreal, like waking from a nightmare. The asylum stood silent behind me, its secrets still locked inside. I don't know if I escaped for good, or if the asylum will call me back again someday. But if you ever find yourself near Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, remember this: Some places are better left alone, because once you step inside, you might never really leave.